I had to first realize what I was doing that was giving you a negative about me, that I didn't love
Perception, yeah.
you or had no care about you. That for me was hard. I'm like, oh, how could that even happen? But I had to look at myself. Well, how have I been responding? How have I been available? How have I nurtured this relationship? Especially we're family, and to me, a family is should be a close relationship. I know it's not for everybody, and I'm still working on some of those areas of my family that have kind of slipped away. But I desire to have that closeness again. So that was the first thing, and that was me, because I get to control how I respond to my family members, the people that God has put around my life, my friends, my neighbors, whatever. So that's just about me. I can't expect everyone else to change so that
Right.
I can like them or interact with them or whatever. So that was the first thing, was figuring out how I was putting off a vibe that was not approachable. And that was hard for me to realize.
Welcome, everybody, to Splintered Grace. My name is Tina Frank, and I'm a conservative Christian woman.
Hi, and I'm Bonnie Violet, a transgender queer drag queen, and we are here to have an anti-cancel culture conversation.
We've realized that there are many family members that are choosing to no longer speak to one another.
We have chosen to sit at the table and engage in difficult conversation to find
Peace and restoration.
sweet. Thanks so much for being here today, Tina.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited for this conversation. So what we thought we would do is kind of take some time to get to know, to introduce ourselves to you all a little bit more. So we were going to focus today on getting to know Tina. Um, what was that?
I said, yay!
Yay. I'm excited to hear a little bit more about you and kind of like growing up. I know we've known each other at least my whole life, but I'm sure there's things about you that I haven't heard before. So I'm excited to hear a little bit more about you today.
Well, I'm not sure how
So
much detail you want about me before you came into the world. But I had a pretty simple upbringing for the most part. My family traveled around Idaho, all over the place. We lived as far as Lewiston. That's a little tiny town, at least it was last time I was there. All the way down to the Twin Falls area, Wendell more specifically. But we lived in all those little towns: Buell, Hagerman, Gooding, Jerome. Anyone who's familiar with that area, we kind of were just all over the place. Um, we moved around a lot because my dad changed jobs a lot. My dad, your grandpa, was crippled, and so he had some physical challenges, and sometimes the job would get to a point where he couldn't do it any longer, or people didn't want the responsibility of having someone that I don't know, wasn't what they would consider normal or able to perform. And my dad was an awful hard worker. I remember him going to work when he didn't have a job and sitting in front of the office and with his lunch, and he would do that for days on end until someone finally found something for him to do. And so I remember hearing him and mom talk about all that stuff. So we moved a lot. Sorry, long way around a short story. But we landed in Wendell, Idaho. And it was a real adjustment for me personally, because all those other times that we moved, we were kind of out country dwellers. Now, country dwellers versus city slicker, and you're going to laugh because the little city that we moved into had, like, I don't know, 3,500 people. I think it's finally grown to like 5,000 now, Dwayne.
yeah,
5,000 maybe. Yeah.
I think it was around 3,000 when I was growing up there.
Yeah.
So
So,
yeah,
so that made me a city slicker, um, in comparison to living out on the farm. So my dad did all kinds of stuff. So I grew up on lots of different farms. Um, helping alongside, doing extras, just doing different kinds of things. But I was really glad that we landed in a place where I could continue and move forward by the time I was in high school. I don't know. I know changing high schools can be challenging for young adults, and I was really grateful I didn't have to go through that. But yeah, so there's really not a whole lot um, exciting. I moved to Arizona as soon as I graduated, probably within a year, and I've been here ever since. So Arizona is my new home.
And when did Christianity come into play for you?
I was in high school actually. Um, I'd been going to, of course, school for a few years. A small school. My graduating class was only 35 people. So it was everybody knew everybody's business and then some. And I actually started going to a little tiny church. Um, my goodness, it was a Free Methodist church, I believe. And it was funny because I only went there because my little sister, your Aunt Roxanne, was going and she was trying to earn points for her Sunday school class because you got points in your Sunday school class if you brought a guest, and if then they were going to have this big party or something at the end of the contest. So I came to help her, and then there was a cute boy in my class. So you know what that meant. I had to come back again and again and again. Turns out that cute boy wasn't there for me. He was there for another young lady who was in the youth group. But it was fun. So during that time, I committed my life to Jesus, and it's been a rocky road ever since.
I
So
mean, so yeah, so what does that mean by when you say like you gave your life to Jesus? What does that look like? Does there something you had to do for that, or?
yeah, thank you for helping me to clarify because I don't want to say things that people can't understand. During church one Sunday morning, our pastor was talking about um, someone that could love me even with all my brokenness and my craziness. You know, in high school, I had a lot of challenges trying to figure out who I wanted to be, who I was. People have ideas and perspectives and hopes, I guess, for me, and I was struggling with trying to figure all that out. And I just felt like I wasn't included or I wasn't a part of all of that thinking. And this pastor had shared, and it was someone that I'd gone to church for a few weeks because I kind of got to know him a little bit. So it wasn't a total stranger at this point. And he just shared about this amazing guy who could love me with all my crazy. Didn't care about any of it. Didn't care what I was doing. Didn't care how I talked. Didn't care how I dressed. Didn't care what color my hair was. Didn't care who my friends were. But that he loved me, and that he loved me so much that he gave his life for me, and that just blew my mind. And he told me in that moment, he said, "You know what? You can have a relationship, and you can start a conversation with this person, and you can tell him whatever you want, and he's not gonna ever pull away." And so I prayed. I got down on my knees that day and I prayed, and I just asked Jesus if he would live in my life, if he would become a part of who I was, and help me to figure out who I was. And it was an incredible experience, and my life changed from that moment on. I will say
And
that as I became an adult, um, I stepped back and didn't continue to talk to Jesus. And then I made some decisions in my life that were very hurtful, not only to myself, but to my family.
do you want to talk a little bit more about that? I was curious though when you talked about like you're crazy or your uh, do you want to talk a little bit about like that for you as far as like what's growing like I guess what growing up kind of I don't know you said something about expectations. Do you want to talk a little bit more about
Sure. I've grown up, and I think most people experience this, at least as I did, or I felt like they did. The more I got up in high school and started to do things, uh, I think people expected certain things from me. You know, they wanted me to get an education, or they wanted me to perform at a certain level. You know, I had an aspiration to go to college and to further my education. And that wasn't the norm in my household and in my parents. I believe all three of my sisters um, older sisters didn't complete school, but I really wanted to. So I was going to, and I was told right out the gate that there was no money for that kind of thing. And so I tried to earn it. So I tried to get good grades. I played any sport that I could get my hands on. Some of them I was better at than others. um, and I just went for it. I thought, you know what, I really felt like that I could do something different than what everyone was telling me. The challenge was when I would have those conversations, people would say, well, what are you going to study? What do you want to be when you grow up? And I was having a hard time trying to figure that out, to the point where you can't you how are you going to know where to go to college if you don't know what you want to be? So that was part of my struggle. And then I had that on the family side, which I believe was all because they loved me and they wanted me to make sure I had my ducks in a row and whatnot. But then I had my friends on the other side. I had two groups of friends. You know, you have the kids that are overachievers that are going for it, going for it, going for it, and their families behind them, and they're making things happen for them, and they're moving forward. And then I have these other kids that, I don't know, kind of seemed somewhat forgotten,
Hmm.
and I was kind of in the middle. When I say forgotten, I mean these kids that weren't sure what they wanted to do, they weren't sure how they wanted to be. These were the kids that one day would come in with a persona of, I don't know what, a cowboy or a cowgirl, and the next day they'd come in with the persona of a punk rocker or whatever. They were trying to define or figure out who they were. You could tell, but there wasn't a whole lot of support for any of that. So for me, I was kind of mixing in both of those groups because I really didn't know who I was either. Um, I was blessed because I was able to. I was just outgoing enough that I could um, make people feel comfortable. You know, people could have a conversation with me. I was good at not telling everybody's business because I certainly didn't want them telling my business. And so it was just kind of a point where I had all this stuff in me, and I did things that probably were not appropriate to be doing. You know, I was not the wild and crazy party girl. I was the person that carted all those folks to make sure they got home safe. But I was out and about doing crazy stuff. But internally, I really was having a hard time with myself. Who am I? Do I really need to be this way? Do I really need to be that way? And I just couldn't find I don't know if a comfort zone would be the right word in all that until that moment.
And so your family was supportive in kind of like your aspirations as far as going to college and that sort of thing?
You know, they told me that I could try it. You can try it. But remember, we don't have money for that kind of stuff. You may not be smart enough. You need to be prepared that if you don't um, make that, then you're going to have to do this and this. So, and I was angry at them for a long time. But then I realized, how would they know? They had never experienced anything like that. So I was like speaking a foreign language to them. As far as I can tell, and I was a distance between my older sisters, that I don't know that any of them had aspirations to do that. And if they did, they certainly had never articulated it to my parents. So what I was bringing to them was totally foreign. I want to do this. I'm going to do this, and I can appreciate that you're telling me you're not going to pay for it. So I'm going to figure this out on my own. And I did the best I could. I didn't end up going to college, by the way, but it worked out.
You did? You did?
I did not. So,
do you want to tell us this? So then what did you do after graduation?
after graduation, I got married to this incredible guy. I had my first baby. And we decided I was going to try to go to DeVry, and because they said, "Oh yeah, you can come down here. We'll hook you up with whatever." So my husband and I picked up all of our stuff and we moved to Arizona. Fit everything in his little Nova, and we started over. We came down and stayed with his cousin and his wife in an apartment. And the rest is history. I mean, we've had a lot of things happen over the years, but yeah, I've been here ever since. This is my new home. So I've been here since 1986.
Nice.
So just gone back for a visit.
Right.
So lots of life has happened in between there, but yeah.
Hey y'all, it's me again, Bonnie Violet. I just wanted to take a second and thank my Patreon members. Patreon members are folks who contribute on a monthly basis anywhere from $3 to $150 a month to support the work of a queer chaplain. Big shout out to Victoria Thompson, Jason Brandt, Brandon Stanton, Kim Silva, Brandy McCarg, Randy Sandknott, Bob Kaiser, Joey Heckmeister, Violet Rhiannon, Gabriel, Jonathan, Petrick, and Todd Atkins Whitley. Thank you so much for your continued contributions. And if you're interested in joining the Patreon, just check the link in the description. Go to patreon.com/Bonnie Violet. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. Definitely. I'm curious too. I know we're like trying to figure out like the best way like to tell our stories, I guess, whether individually and together. Um, I don't know what you think about maybe if we like maybe because you shared about high school stuff, maybe I could share up to high school too.
I would love that.
Okay,
I would love
I'm feeling like there's so much I want to say.
Yeah, just say it. I think this needs to be an open conversation. I don't want to have so much structure that we just can't be real.
Right. Okay, well, yeah, and I mean, you know this, but I grew up in that little town of Wendell,
Mm-hmm.
and I totally related with the idea that you were talking about a town kid, because I remember, I mean, I lived pretty much on the same corner most of my life. There was like a moment where we did live out in the country, and at that time, I don't remember a lot of my childhood. But so it's kind of like scattered, but we did live in the country for some time where we had like pigs and we had rabbits, and we burnt our trash in a burn barrel and we like pulled around on the back of like snowmobiles with like car hoods to the back of it. Totally like really fun stuff. But I remember living in the town, and all my cousins had like they had lambs, and they were in 4-H, and I remember I wanted to have one. I couldn't because I was a town kid.
Yep.
So I definitely relate to that. But so I am Tina's like next in line, I guess, sister as far as age goes. There's 5 girls, and Tina's number 4, and my mom's number 3.
Yeah.
And my mom had me
in corner for a while.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Did you grow up on that corner too?
For a while, yeah. I was there for all of my high school, and all of my high school. I used to walk to the gym and walk to school.
Right, to the new gym?
Yeah, to the new gym. Yeah, yeah. That was before they had anything else. They're just the new gym.
Right. Yeah, because I remember like when we first lived on that corner, it was me and my family, and then next to us was my grandma and grandpa, which are your parents, and then behind us was Aunt Rose. And I don't remember if Aunt Rose was there. Like, I feel like it was later on in the years, but at one point she was living next door to us. I was trying to think where to start with all that.
Well, there's a lot to share. That's why I was like, I don't even know where to begin.
I know, right? My mom and dad, like we lived in a trailer there on the corner most of my life. As I say, like, I don't remember much below the age of 12, and I'm not really quite sure why that is, but it's just kind of my truth. I do have bits and pieces of memory, which are mostly times at school, and not really much at home. I was told later on that I'd witnessed something traumatic when I was like 5, and outside of our house, but it was something it was a violent thing that I just was never around violence. My family was very like not physically violent within the home, and I'd witnessed something, I guess, and my parents had told me that I had actually stopped talking for a while. Do you remember this? Like, were you around? Yeah,
I do. Yeah, I was there as well.
How long did I not speak?
You know what, Dwayne? I don't know how long. It seemed like a long time. But I don't know. I don't know how long it was. It
I
was
was,
traumatic for everybody in the whole family.
hmm. And I don't remember anything about it. Like my family told me about it in like my mid 20s. And but I had a thing where I cried, like when I would, like I just cried whenever like anyone like
Anyone
spoke
talk
up,
to you? Yep.
talked to me, and like
Yep.
and I and that went on even into my teen years, even into my early 20s. I was still very much like, if there was any potential confrontation, somebody were to raise their voice, I would just automatically, it was like my body would just automatically start crying. And then it was
Mm.
a really difficult thing for my father to kind of handle, I think, because my dad, a lot of the times all he had to do was like speak up to me even a little bit, and
Yeah.
I would just cry, and there was nothing I could do about it, and it would just upset him more, and then that would just upset me more, because it was like I
Yeah.
had no control over it, and I really wasn't even sure why it was even happening. um, but and yeah, so I mean, that was just something I remember my friends even telling me, that I was the kid at school who cried, would turn red and cry. Like
Yeah.
that's just what I did.
Yeah.
I know that you started me at church. We
Mhm.
went to I went to that Free Methodist church that you spoke of.
Yeah.
Do you remember how old I was when you first took me there?
Oh, wow. Let me think. So I was going there from probably 82 to 85. So how old would you have been, Dwayne?
I would have been like 3 in 82, so that'd be like
Yeah.
3, 4 years
3, 4
old.
years old. Yeah. So I used to put you in the back of my little Pinto and take you and a whole bunch of other kids. And we would go to church on Sunday mornings. And then we also would do vacation Bible school during the summer because that was a lot of fun. So yeah, so you were just a little guy, and we loved going to church. Both of us. We like getting dressed up. We liked seeing our friends. We liked being silly. It was just really a place where we could just be who we were.
Yeah,
You know.
I really resonate with that too. Like I don't remember that time, but I've always had this feeling, once, like when I was 12 is when I feel like I, I came to.
But
I had
yeah.
my other aunt Tina died on my dad's side, and I had a friend that was killed that year as well. Those were the first times that I would recall feeling death, and for whatever reason, it was
Mm.
like after those situations, I have a little bit more memory. So I'm
Wow.
not sure why that is. Maybe it was just another kind of difficult thing that had to kind of like snap me out of it or whatever. But I just don't really remember much before that. But I remember having this feeling of like loving church,
Hmm.
and loving you, and that you took me to church.
Yeah.
Um,
We hung
and
out a lot when you were little because you were just easy. So I'm gonna take Dwayne. We're gonna go to Circle. No, we didn't have Circle K. What did we have down there?
well,
We didn't
well,
have
now it
Maverick then either. We had something else.
was Miller, like Miller's was like gas
Yes. Yeah.
station.
And Simmerly's. We Simmerly's was a yeah. So we used to go down there all the time.
Yeah. And I
So
mean, I relate. I mean, you were like, I mean, and I just remember you were like, you were a hero to me, always were. Um,
mm,
ever, I mean, my grandma Bonnie was my first hero. I don't remember her, but I know that I loved her to pieces from
yeah,
what everyone
she's a
said.
pretty awesome lady.
Yeah, and she passed away when I was, I think, 2.
Yeah, you were little.
Um, and and then like you were kind of like the thing for me that I remember being drawn to, it was, one, we had the church aspect, and I definitely related with that idea of like church was where I could just kind of like let loose and just relax. Like
Hmm.
felt like
You were
it's
safe.
where I was, so yeah, and I felt safe. I could be social. It just, for whatever reason, I just felt better there, because at school, a lot like you, I wanted to get good grades, and I wanted to get honors, and I did wanted to do whatever I could so that I could get an opportunity to kind of do like what you did, to hopefully go to college. And because my family was in a very similar situation where they were very supportive of me
They were very
going.
proud of you.
They,
When I would call home, they would say, "Oh, Dwayne's doing this and doing that, and he's doing this." So yeah, they were very proud of you. They still are very proud of you.
definitely, and they were very encouraging of like of me going to college, or really whatever it was that I wanted. They were very like supportive of doing that, but kind of like you said, they like with your parents, they just didn't know how. They'd
Yeah.
never gone to college, they'd never done those things before, so they didn't really know how to like really show me how to do those things.
Right.
I wanted to do, I had always wanted, I had a really hard time growing up poor. um, I hate to say that because, but that's just the truth of it. I had a really hard time with it, more so socially. Like at home, I was fine because I always had everything that I always had food, always had everything that we needed. Uh, and the only thing that like I didn't have was like the coolest jeans or like the nicest clothes or something like that, which seemed really silly. Seems really silly now, but at that time it was something for me that I was really kind of like challenged by, I guess. Um, but there was a part of me that also, because everyone was so encouraging, it was like I really felt kind of that pressure, that expectation of one, you're gonna go and like you're going to go to college or whatever, but you're also like, I always want to be an architect. So, I was building a house for my parents one day, and hopefully, I think in my younger mind was kind of to scoop us out of poverty, and to hopefully have an easier experience with life. I mean, my parents taught me generosity and kindness, and I mean, we were always giving to people who were less fortunate than us. And that was always a big part of like our identity, I think, as a family. And it was one of one of the things that I still hold really dear to me that my parents had like passed on to me.
Yeah.
And church was like, I too like asked Jesus to be my Lord and Savior, and had an experience of, being saved, and got baptized, and I was super active in drama and theater and Bible studies, and that's where I dated. It was like it was a really fun kind of cool space, and I felt really cool, which I didn't feel anywhere else. My cousins were always a little bit cooler than I was.
I think that's just perspective.
Total perspective.
Yeah, that's just perspective.
Yeah. It's interesting though how we kind of like see ourselves like as like, especially as we're growing up. But my parents weren't really church going folk, and so like I was kind of odd, I guess, weird in that way with my family. Did grandma and grandpa go to church?
No.
Was that something you grew up with?
No, they didn't. Yeah, they didn't go to church at all. They questioned my baptism. It was interesting, and only because they didn't understand. They were afraid that I asked them if I could get baptized, and I remember mom having a conversation with me that, you should not join a church, because she was equating one with the other. You should not join a church until you find the guy you want to be with, so that you guys can do that together, which the heart of it was good wisdom. The difference was baptism is different than joining a church. And so when I sat down and she said I could get baptized as long as I wasn't joining the church. I said, okay. So that was the only time I think mom and dad came to church, was when I got baptized. And then again, when I got married in that building, because it was no longer a church.
Yeah, that makes me think of too. I remember my parents were always supportive of me going to church. They never.
Oh yeah, my mom and dad let me go, but they didn't go with me.
And I remember coming home at one point and being like devastated. I came home from church and I was in tears and I was upset. And I remember my mom was like, "What is wrong with you?" And I was like, I don't, she's like, I'm like, you and dad. I was like, you and dad are such great people, and you're kind and you're generous, but you're going to hell. And my mom's like, what? Well, you guys don't go to church, so you're going to hell. You haven't asked God to be your Lord and Savior, or something like that. And my mom goes, how do you know I don't have a relationship with God? And I was like, well, you don't go to church, like, you know what I mean? And I don't remember any further where that conversation went, but I just remember having that idea of like, oh, I think that was maybe one of the first times that I thought I was, I guess, given an opportunity to see that there might be a different way of having a relationship with God. And yeah, my mom was really, I thought she really handled that really well for me at that time, because I was awesome. I was so conflicted, because I was like, I'm hearing this thing, but I'm feeling this thing, and I don't understand.
It's yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Um, yeah. And so like, I was able to get out of school. Like graduated high school and moved out to Phoenix, actually moved
Yep.
out, moved in with you.
Yeah.
Um, and fairly similar. You went to a DeVry and I also went to like, or did you make it? You were planning to.
I
And,
went I went one semester and I realized that cubicles are not for me.
right.
'Cause
I had,
I have too much
I had,
personality for that. Anyone who knows me outside of this, yeah, the cubicles are not for me.
you're like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to an architectural drafting school for a little while, and I too went halfway. I went about halfway through the program, and I was just like, this is taking all the fun and the creativity out of like building homes and stuff. Like I
Yeah.
wanted to look cool. I didn't really think too much about like what they would they
They're
would
going to
stand
stay standing or not. Yeah.
so and then that's also too when I kind of got a call to like to go to Bible college and to be a youth pastor. But
Yeah.
I wanted you to talk a little bit more about kind of like, so when you got to Arizona,
Yeah.
you had Andrea by then.
Yep. I had Andrea and I was only here a few months when I got pregnant with Chantel. So
Okay, so Andrea,
my second daughter.
and when you moved, Chantel was in your belly.
Yep. Chantel was in my belly.
That's
So
cool.
yeah. Yeah. So when I got here, I didn't know that until after I started school, which is one of the reasons that I didn't continue. I didn't love it, and I was going to have a second child, and it's like, you know what, I've got to do something different. So my husband Daryl, my kids' dad at the time, very supportive. He came with me away from his family too, because he grew up in 10 miles from me in another little town, about 3,500 people. And so we came down here, and it was just like the whole world opened up. I remember us when we were driving, because again, we all had all of our stuff crammed in this little tiny Nova. And we came up to this, I don't know, it was like the last, I want to say hill, just based on my memory, but you could see all the lights of the city. It was just glowing up over the hills there. We'd never seen anything like that before. You know, we Twin Falls is big for us, but that was like overwhelming. And so we pulled up over the hill there, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I don't know how Daryl felt, probably petrified. I don't know for sure, but I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be my new life. And as we came down, and of course we thought we were rich too, because we had like $500 in our wallet, which was nothing when we got here. Couldn't even rent an apartment, or barely, we couldn't turn on the utilities, anything like that. So I'm grateful that Daryl's cousin was here ahead of us, so we had a place to actually go. Had we made that journey without that, I don't know. We would have been back in the car on the way back, probably the next day. But so we were able to stay with them and get our bearings. I got a job at the mall. Daryl got a job doing something in manufacturing, and we just started putting our life together. And it was hard. It was really hard. His cousins eventually left, so we were here by ourselves. Of course, Daryl and I eventually got a divorce, which was hard also.
It's yeah.
Pardon?
And two other children during that
Oh,
time.
yeah. Yeah. We had a total of four kids, and we ended up getting divorced in the long run. And I stayed, and he went back. So,
And
but yeah.
was church was Christianity still a part of your life at that time?
Yeah, it was. Daryl and I had both decided that we wanted to live a Christian life. So one of the things that helped us a lot when we got here was getting plugged into a church. So we found a church right away in the little area where we lived, and we started going to church. And it was awesome. The people there were able to help us find an apartment. There were people there that their businesses were hiring, so we were able to get our bearings and do some things. Of course, it was a place where my kids could go and have opportunity and be around other kids. Sometimes I was able to find someone who can watch my kids, because we had to work. Daryl and I worked two different shifts, so because we didn't have money to pay a babysitter. So he'd work one shift and I'd work the other shift. We'd just see each other in passing. But once in a while, we got to have a babysitter so that we could have some time together or do something different. But yeah, so the church for us, the physical church for us was really pretty amazing. And we did well. We got our bearings. Oh, I think we did. We eventually bought a house after a few years. We were here for quite a while. We eventually bought a house, and then I guess I'm just I'm gonna take the blame. I got unsettled, and we ended up going through a divorce. So, and when that all happened, of course, it was really hard on all of us. Um, Daryl decided it would be better for him to go back to Idaho, and I get that, and I stayed here with the girls, and I was a single parent for my goodness 8-10 years. With me and the girls were on our own. Pros and cons. It was hard in both scenarios. And my mom, I just love her so much. But she, oh, you should come home. You should come home. And I kept telling her I can't. This is my home. I just couldn't. And I love going back now. I love visiting. I don't know that I'll ever live there, but for me, this was my opportunity to grow, to expand, to experience life. And now, as a mature Christian woman, it's my foundation to where I'm headed next. Because I always feel like there's a destination in mind. And I since I am a Christian, I do read my Bible, and my Bible says in Ephesians that this is my paraphrase. I can look it up if you want me to look it up, but my paraphrase is that if I'll allow it, God, Jesus, desires to do far more through my life and in my life than I could ever think or imagine. And for me, I feel like God's planted me in Arizona to manifest that through my life. And so
that's always been very clear to you that Arizona is where you need to be.
The second I saw when I came over the hill, I knew it was exactly where I needed to be. So I pray for Daryl. He's an amazing guy. He still interacts with our kids. I mean, he's a great dad. I think he's in Idaho right now, with your parents actually. I think, but yeah, I hope that for him. I mean, I don't know where he's at with what he's doing in life or what he wants to be when he grows up, but I hope that he was able to move forward and hope he's living the life that he wants to live, because that's what I'm doing. I'm living the life that I want to live.
I related with that concept of like kind of going to Phoenix and like kind of being shocked about
Yeah.
There's a new world.
Well, you had at least gone to Boise once. I had never gone to Boise.
That's true. I mean, I had lived in Boise for a few times when I got to like work in the House of Representatives.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big deal. I had a sponsor family. I took the bus, places.
See, I hadn't done any of those things when I got here.
The first that I knew of, I met my first lesbian on the bus. When I was that age, I was a junior, senior. I was a senior in high school, and I remember my first lesbian woman on the bus for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But that was such a it was a big deal. And when we were young, we got to travel and to visit you and Daryl, and when we were young, when we were pretty young, we would maybe a couple of times.
I'm trying to think how old you were. I can't remember how old you were.
I remember the drive there. I remember we listened to Tommy Rowe, which is like and sugar, what's that? Oh, sugar. I don't know.
I don't know.
We listened to that tape like the whole time there. I don't know why. Singing and listening to that. So I do remember that. And then you had a pool, which was like we had never really experienced before. But I had a little bit of a culture shock when I moved to Phoenix, and was just like, there were just so many people around all the time.
All the time, yeah.
I remember feeling like a little anxious about it, because it was just, I just wasn't used to being around that many people all the time. And it was like, and Arizona was so spread out, which which actually I think was kind of nice because it kind of felt like a big little, like a big
Yeah.
little, um, because once I, ended up living in Chicago or been to other cities, or even here in San Francisco, everything is on top of each other. So it's like, it's just a lot in a smaller area.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think where we're at on our time. Um, yeah, where do we go from here?
I don't know. So what maybe we should talk about why we decided to have a conversation.
Yeah, for sure. So, and basically, I mean, at this point in time in our life, we were, really, I think the reality is, eventually, I don't know, I feel like it's a spoiler alert.
Oh, okay. Well,
um,
never don't go there then.
well, yeah, yeah, because or we can even just go there to an extent.
It
I
doesn't
mean,
matter to me. It
I'm,
we have so much that has happened separately and together over the years that I'm hoping that any portion of it would just allow someone to be willing to take a step. Because if it's okay, can I go off on a little for a second? Okay. I have realized over time that the family that were born into was not an accident. There's purpose in it. There's I believe, being a woman of faith and a Christian woman, I believe that each one of us, every person alive, was created for a purpose. And there's an ultimate purpose that we have the ability to choose to fulfill. And the family that we were placed in is a part of that. Because the family that we have put those things, like you were saying earlier, your family kind of set the stage for you to be generous, to be a giver, to help people no matter what you had, and to set your need aside to embrace someone else's need. That's something that your family gave to you. Had you been put in another family, that may not be something that you would have. And so I have to believe that those things that we had, and no matter how much we want to think our families are broken or dysfunctional or we hate somebody or whatever it is, or how different we think they are, who cares? There's a purpose in that particular family. And so I am excited and I hope that anything that we share, be it the times that we had together, the times that maybe we didn't like each other, the times that, whatever, that someone would find something they can hold on to and they'd be willing to be the first one to make a call, the first one to write a letter, the first one to send a text. And maybe not even say, I want to see your beautiful face. Maybe it's I just want to say hi. Because I think when we can get back to that foundation of where we started, all those amazing things that we were destined for are back in motion, are back in motion. And they're going to be bigger and better than we can think or imagine. So that's kind of what I'm hoping comes out of our conversations, no matter how we decide to have them every time we get together.
Yeah, me too. I resonate with a lot of that. I couldn't, for whatever reason, I couldn't hear the first part of it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I probably talk too soft. My husband tells me all the time, you got to talk louder.
I was noticing it was coming across. It was my internet connection went weird for a second, so
Okay.
it wasn't you. It was just on my end. But I did catch the end of it, and definitely, I think that's why. You and I have, you and I are now at a like we have a relationship that I probably would have thought I would have had with you when I was young.
Mm.
Um, and, as a younger adult and even into just a few years ago, I don't think it's a relationship I thought I would have been able to have with you. So and that's, I think, part of what, like, this is, I think, why it's important is that, like, we haven't got along always. We haven't always saw eye to eye. And we've been able to, and in a lot of ways, I think I maybe hurt one another. And I know I was hurt really deeply by you, not in any way that was intentional. And like, as a grown ass person now, like, I can know that I held you to a crazy expectation. Like, you brought me to you brought me to God, you brought me to church. You left home, like in a lot of ways, I like, you know, I put a lot on you. And so like, I think once I lost my relationship with you, because I, lost my relationship with you, that it kind of also caused me to stray away from God.
Mm.
Um, and
I'm sorry about that.
ultimately it caused me to actually get to a place where I could come to rely on God, which is not something I don't know that I did um, ever before. Um, I would say, like 12 years ago when I got sober is when I first came to rely on a higher power that,
Yeah.
well, at first, that was still a person that I had, a person who had been sober a little longer than me. He kind of became my higher power for a minute until he let me down.
Yeah.
That's, that's what we
Yeah.
do. Like
Yep. That's what we do. I mean, we're human.
exactly. And then that's where, at least for me, that's where like God came into place for me
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where we're at on time. I don't know if maybe we should like
Wrap it up.
yeah, like wrap up this session and
Okay.
and we did kind of like leave a little like I guess some curiosities. What happened?
Yeah.
What caused them to be distant in their relationship? Well,
Yeah.
if you want to find out, check out our next podcast, which we're gonna do next week, probably same time. Is that what we're thinking?
That works for me.
So we'll be here again next week. Um, I know like it's because it's a podcast, but we're still figuring out this podcast video thing. We're actually live on Facebook now, but we're also recording a podcast. So I think when we're putting in dates and times and that sort of stuff, it can get a little wonky. But
Yeah.
basically, every Monday at around 10:30 in the morning, we're going to go live and probably do about an hour session or so, talking about, I guess, our relationship and kind of
That's
do,
awesome.
yeah, like we're just going to talk about kind of we're just trying to set a stage of like, so that there's kind of an understanding of history. Also, part of this is helping us, I think, know each other a little bit more,
Yeah. Yeah.
and kind of build kind of a foundation, because ultimately we want people to understand that we each have different points of views and they were created and we've come to rely on them or believe them for a reason, and so we're wanting to get to a space where we can share some of that, uh, and I think with each other as well as
Yeah.
potentially with other folks who might also I don't know, get something from it as well.
Yeah.
Maybe they can start a conversation with
And
someone.
we want to encourage all of you guys to not give up. Don't give up on those relationships that you held dear. Don't give up on those relationships that you desire to have. I can imagine how sad, crazy, angry, whatever some of those may have been, but don't give up on them, especially if they're in your immediate family. There's so much to gain for you personally, for you to gain from them and from the world around them. And even if it's just that originally for a selfish reason, reach out, because in the end, it's going to be so amazing as long as you both choose to love each other.
Indeed, and I think
Yeah.
that's the crux, is that we're both choosing,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
sit at the same table and to have these conversations, even if we talked before we like decided to even do this. We talked about like my biggest fear was like at some point in time I'm going to reveal something or I'm going to say something that's going to close that door. Um,
Yeah.
that you know what I mean, and we both
Yeah.
committed to each other that we're not going to let that happen.
We're not going to let that happen.
And
We're
it
going to
and it
choose to
does,
not be offended.
and we might get offended for a minute, but we also decided we're going to call each other anyway, and we're going to
Yeah.
talk. You know what? Like, we don't know what's going to come of this, because I feel like we've done well to have these conversations for a couple of years now.
Hmm.
But I do feel like there may be some things that we've skirted around too, which is okay. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's the process, and I think so. Part of this too is, I think, for us to maybe deepen our relationship as
I
well.
hope so. That's a desire of my heart.
Yeah. Mine too. And I'm hoping that it'll allow me to be able to also allow more grace with other people in my life that I've had a little bit more of a challenge of being in a relationship with this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And relationships are scary. I mean, think about it. It's a place of vulnerability where we can get hurt at lots of different levels. And so, anytime that we open ourselves up, we're taking a risk. And if someone walks into that relationship with us, they're taking on a little bit of a responsibility. So, we can talk more about that later on. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be part of the conversation. I'm grateful to be sitting at this table with you, Dwayne. And I'm open to answer whatever questions you have or anyone who wants to reach out and ask a question. I'm happy to answer. There's not anything that I'm not willing to share.
awesome, fantastic. I feel the exact same way, and we'll review any sort of questions or comments that have come over this last podcast. As you guys know, this is a new process for us, so we'll get a little bit
bear with us.
Bear with us, but join us next week, and we'll pick up where we left off. Take care. And
awesome. See you, everybody. Have a great week.
Splintered Grace Podcast is brought to you by a queer chaplain. Follow us on all of our social medias, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at a queer chaplain. Listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe, comment, like, and share. Feel free to tip us at Venmo, Bonnie Violet, and support monthly on Patreon. The song is original by Steven Sandnoff, The Chasm Between Us. Rest in peace, Steven.
Hey, how's it going? Bonnie Violet here. I'm a trans femme, genderqueer, spiritual drag artist, and digital chaplain. And in case you didn't know, I could really use your support. Engage, rate, subscribe, follow, comment, share this episode, book me to keynote, panel, guest on your show, or officiate your wedding or memorial, in or out of drag, collaborate, join the team, be a guest, make a pitch, sponsor an episode, join my Patreon, send me a tip on Venmo or PayPal. Just do something. Thank you so much for your continued support. Check out the links in the description.